What's up, guys? This is Paul with Underground Custom Cycles LLC. Our website is undergroundcustommotorbikes.com. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of an analysis, a little bit of a technical overview of what you're going for with the port and polish on these two-stroke bicycle motors. It's basically the same for the 48, 50cc and the 66cc. They're all pretty much the same. What you see over here is a little, this is basically just an outline of the two-stroke motor. You've got the intake here, so your air-fuel mixture is going to be coming in here, and it actually goes underneath the piston head down here, and then it comes up through the transfer ports above the piston head, and then as the piston head moves up, it's compressed. Then it ignites and comes out here through the exhaust port. So you've got your intake port here for your air-fuel mixture, and then you've got your exhaust port here where the exhaust comes out. What I've got over here is basically just a mock-up of this is a front view of the cylinder. So this is your intake port for your air-fuel mixture. This is basically like an inside profile, so you're looking at the front of the intake port and the back of the intake port here, and this is what it looks like stock. This is kind of how it comes. It's got kind of a rounded square shape to it, and then what you see over here this is the same thing. This is the front, the outside intake, and the inside of the cylinder. So what you're going for with the porting and the port matching is you want to round out these corners on the intake port. And this is kind of like a before, this is like an after kind of what you're going for. You want to round out these corners and kind of smooth everything out, and kind of you want to maximize the amount of airflow that you can get through the intake port. Now on the outside you can increase the size a little bit on the top and the bottom, but on the inside of the cylinder you don't want to take too much, particularly off the top. You can take a little bit off the bottom, but if you take too much off the top or too much off the bottom, it's going to affect the timing, and you don't necessarily want to do that. So what this is just a description of how you can just maximize the flow, and without affecting the timing too much. On the inside of the cylinder intake port, you can come out a little bit further on the lateral sides than you can on the outside, because on the outside you've got where your bolts are going to go in, and you want to leave a little bit of space there for the gasket so that it seals properly. You don't want to go so far that you're not getting a good seal or you're reducing the structural integrity. So within those limitations, you just want to round it out and bring it out as far as you can, and then on the inside you're going to round it out and bring it out a little bit more into the lateral edges. Here's kind of an overview. The red is like the post porting, and the black line would be kind of a representation of how it looks stock. And then this is the inside, so it's basically the same thing. You're just rounding it out, opening it up a little bit, except on the inside you can come out a little bit further into the lateral edges. So that's the intake port here. You want to basically do the same thing for the exhaust port, so you can maximize the airflow. You kind of want to keep in mind the direction of flow. On the intake, everything's flowing this way, and on the exhaust everything's flowing this way. So once you have reshaped these and ported it out basically to where you want it, you want to come inside, and on the inside edge you want to put a very slight chamfer on this edge. And the reason you do that is so that the gasket on your cylinder head isn't going to catch on that corner. A lot of times too with these motors, I think it's a casting imperfection, but the airflow is coming in and then coming down, and a lot of times there's a little casting imperfection. It's like there's a lip right here on the lower bottom side of the intake port, and that is exactly the opposite of what you want. So at the very least, you want to definitely check that and make sure there's no burr there or little lip there, because you want the air mixture, the air fuel mixture, to come in, and then it actually goes down underneath the piston head and then comes up through the transfer ports above the piston head. So you want to make sure that the air fuel mixture is going down, and so you want to get in there and take off if there's a little lip, which I've seen, and I think it's just a casting imperfection the way that they cast these cylinders. So you want to definitely get that little lip out and kind of open this up a little bit within reason. And like I said, you can go, because of the timing, you don't want to go too big, you don't want to go too far up on the inside. You can go a little bit down on the inside, so you can bring it down a little bit in here. But if you go too far up or too far down, it's going to affect the timing. So you want to work more on the inside, like I said, with the lateral edges here, and opening up the lateral edges like you see here on the inside of the intake port in your cylinder. And then once you have the basic shape that you want and you get rid of that little burr, you're going to want to put just a very slight chamfer on all the edges all the way around here, so that your cylinder head gaskets aren't catching on those. If you take it out and it's got a little bit of a burr, it can damage the gasket there. And then you want to do the same thing on the exhaust port, basically, that you do on the intake port. So once you open that up to basically the shape that you want, and you don't want to go too far up or too far down, like I said, because that'll affect the timing. You just want to open it up a little bit, smooth out round out the corners, so that you're maximizing the potential airflow in the ports. And once you've gotten your ports shaped out and you've gotten a little bit of a chamfer there, you're going to want to clean the cylinder. You definitely want to clean the cylinder to make sure that there's no debris, there's no burrs inside, because you don't want that inside of your cylinder that can definitely damage your engine. So you want to clean everything. And then also, when you reassemble the cylinder and put your cylinder back on top of your engine, you want to either take some two-stroke motor and put it on the inside of the cylinder to make sure everything's lubed up. You don't want it to be dry, especially the first time you start the engine. It's definitely going to help if you just rub some oil on the inside of your cylinder so that your cylinder head can move freely. It'll make it a lot easier to start the engine for the first time. And then once you've ported these out, the exhaust port you can polish. So once you have the shape that you want, you can use a finer grit sandpaper, or you can use a polish to polish that out. On the intake port, it's okay to leave it rough. a rough grit sandpaper, it's okay because the texture in the intake port is actually going to atomize the fuel as the fuel goes in and make it more combustible. So you don't necessarily want to polish the intake port. You can definitely polish the exhaust port because it's just going out. It's not going to affect anything. That little bit of rough edge, it just helps to mix and atomize the air fuel mixture that's going in there. So once you have shaped it out, gotten your port, put a little camphor, cleaned everything, you want to take a piece of paper and basically cut a piece of paper out that matches the shape and cut the holes out where the bolts would be. And then you want to put that on the outside of the intake port and just use some pressure and push your finger across the edge of the port so that you can transfer the shape of the port onto a piece of paper, and then you just flip the piece of paper over and you put it on your intake so that you can get a profile of that port on your intake, and then you want to match the shape of the port on your intake as closely as possible so that it's a smooth transition, that there's no, you don't want a difference in the shape, and you want all the transitions to be gradual. A lot of times, particularly on the exhaust and with the intake actually, sometimes it's a perfect circle. So your stock port is almost like a rectangle, and then you put your intake or your exhaust on there and it's like a perfect circle, and the shape doesn't match. So that overhang, that little bit of overhang that's in there, is going to create drag, and it's going to slow down all the airflow. So once you get the shape how you want it on the intake port and on the exhaust port, you want to get that profile, match it up, and then you want to transfer that shape as closely as possible to the intake and to the exhaust so that there's a smooth transfer. Another thing that you can do to increase the intake of the air fuel is if you put the piston head in the cylinder and you push it to top dead center, and you want to make sure that it's oriented properly, you'll see that the bottom of the piston head kind of hangs down in front of the port, and that can interfere with the airflow of the air fuel going in. So you can take a grinder or a Dremel, and you can take a little bit off of the piston head so that there's more clearance. You can match it basically to the top of that port so that you get maximum airflow in. And then, so once you do that, you're pretty much good to go. Okay, guys, I'm gonna put these technical diagrams up on the website, undergroundcustommotorbikes.com, in the blog section. So if you want to look at these diagrams, I'm going to also be putting up more diagrams and possibly like kind of a technical outline of the process, and I'm going to be doing some more diagrams in the future. So if you want to see that, just go to undergroundcustommotorbikes.com and check in the blog section, and definitely subscribe so you can see actually the whole process from start to finish. I'm going to do a start to finish of this so you can see the whole thing. Hopefully this is useful. Yeah, if you guys found this interesting or useful at all, please give it a like. It definitely helps me out a lot and will let me continue working on this stuff. So as always, guys, thanks for checking out the video. Have fun out there, and happy biking.